Nottingham Forest 2, Manchester United 2. A little bit of a reality check for Ruben Amorim's men and also us fans. We've had a few very decent results recently. This one felt like crashing back down to earth with quite a poor performance, quite flat from United. It felt like we never really got started. And my biggest problem was that it felt relatively easy for Forest. Now, when I say it was easy for Forest, I don't mean that they absolutely battered us or were miles better than us, but it felt like it was quite comfortable for them to play against. I would say in recent weeks, United have been a pain to play against because we've been very physical, we've been very good in the duels, we've played a lot of long ball football, and we've been quite combative, we've been quite compact defensively as well. We've been a threat moving forward, all things that the opposition don't want. That, of course, means in this match, it was sort of the flip. We weren't very intense, we weren't very physical, we were not at all compact, and we didn't really carry much attacking threat, which all in all just sort of means not a great day from United, so perhaps a draw isn't the worst result in the world considering the performance. The question is, why was it so easy? Why did Forest find it easy to get a grip in this game? Well, it's because initially United were quite passive from a defensive point of view. And that's okay, you don't have to be a super high pressing side all of the time, particularly when we consider that Forest will often go long from goal kicks and things like that. But in open play, when the ball settled and the Forest players got on the ball at the back, they had a little bit too much time for my liking. Now, again, I don't feel that you necessarily have to go and press them constantly, but I think you need to be aggressive within your shape and ready to jump and apply pressure. And I didn't feel that United were. What we've seen at times recently is United shifting to more of a 4-4-2 like this. The compactness of the 4-4-2 has varied, but what it certainly does is it gives United an extra player, compared to last season, to press with. We've got 4 midfielders and 2 forwards, so if we want to, there are those moments where we can go sort of aggressive, we can jump from the block, try and nick the ball, turn the ball over and be aggressive. We saw that last weekend against Brighton. This week what we saw was a bit of a return to more of last season's approach. Ahmad on the right-hand side, yes, on occasion was still able to play on the side of midfield, but more often than not, he actually came a little bit more tucked and was playing a bit more connected to the back 5. And that meant for United, we simply have one less player higher up the pitch. In a numbers game, that means it's more difficult to apply pressure to the ball, which is why Forest can sort of grow into the game. It also created a space on the side of the United midfield. This space outside of Casemiro here, particularly when the ball was over here. So let's say Forest play the ball down the right-hand side, and we know always that United will shift across because it makes sense. If Forest were able to perhaps work the ball backwards first or just go laterally across the pitch, there was always this sort of room on the far side of midfield, particularly if Williams was willing to overlap for Forest and Hudson-Odoi could come inside. There was no one really picking him up. And, you know, perhaps in previous weeks when we've been more aggressive, Ahmad would have been there covering that space. But this week we were passive, and this is what I mean by being a little bit too easy to play against. It was a bit too basic for Forest to move forward. Now, despite being relatively easy to play against, Forest didn't exactly create a lot of opportunities because they are not a great footballing side at this moment in time. They themselves are quite low on confidence and have had a poor start to the season. However, there was one other thing that they did from an attacking point of view, which was a little bit concerning for me, not necessarily in this match, but if we're talking about the long term. If you cast your mind back to last week, you will remember us talking about Luke Shaw being absolutely crucial, pivotal, vital to the team's performance. And the reason why he was so important was because when last week, Brighton midfielders were dropping deeper, Luke Shaw was following them. If you cast your mind back to that video, perhaps go and rewatch it after this one, I did make a comment and a bit of a warning that last week it worked. There will be weeks where it doesn't because it leaves a big old space here. And if a team is willing to get runners into that space like this, and Diogo Dalot isn't willing to cover or isn't switched on enough to track that run, there is potentially going to be a problem for United. And we actually saw that twice in quick succession in this game. Now, again, it didn't really lead to anything. Of course, the Forest goals were from a lot of deep crosses into our box, which is just poor. But this is something to keep an eye on because last week it sort of worked really well for us. This week, as teams start to sort of adjust to play against you, it didn't go in our favour so much and Forest were able to get in behind. Of course, the other thing to be wary of defensively was the fact that we were very passive, particularly at the start of the second half. We just collapsed too deep. We've had a problem for a long time, like many years, with our wide players, our fullbacks and wingbacks, stopping crosses coming into the box or not stopping crosses. We had that problem in this game. The other problem we had was we had 3 centre-backs dropping right into the 6-yard box, not dealing with the deliveries. But also I felt that Casemiro was just collapsing too deep. He should have been out on the edge applying pressure. He wasn't, and Forest got 2 goals in quick succession, and yeah, that wasn't great. So, okay, United were relatively easy to play against defensively. It was a bit too easy for Forest to move up the pitch. But how about when United got on the ball? Because today, I don't want to have to be too critical. I've enjoyed being positive about the 3 wins. We have seen things in those games which have been good, which have been promising, that can allow us to compete against a certain type of team. All along, though, we have also been wary of the fact that in different types of matches, United would potentially still have problems. This isn't necessarily the sort of game where we can go long for 90 minutes and play on the second balls, and we didn't really attempt to do that so much in this game. This was more about, at times, particularly in the second half, trying to break a team down, looking at Nottingham Forest and trying to find a way through them. And this is where it was a little bit disappointing. I said before the match, if United can win this match, I'll be really impressed because it's a different type of win. It's a different type of opposition. It's a different task ahead of you, breaking a team down, dominating the ball and trying to find a way through. Less large spaces to cover. And unfortunately, we failed to do so largely. And I felt like we looked a little bit toothless, a little bit flat. We didn't really get going with our ideas. And I guess if you look at the starting 11, there is sort of a basic, essential balance problem that is going to be on display. And Amorim alluded to it after the match. If we go over to the left side of the pitch, of course we've got Luke Shaw left-footed on the left, but he plays quite a deep position. Ahead of him, you've got 3 right-footed players. And that's potentially in this sort of game a bit of a problem. When you're covering big spaces, when you're playing transitional football, the opposition are open, it doesn't matter too much because the space is there still, you can get the runners onto the ball. When it's a bit more compact and Forest are a little bit deeper and behind the ball, what you really need to do is stretch the pitch. Now that can be stretch the pitch by literally standing on the touchline, or it can be stretching the pitch by when you receive the ball, because you're left-footed, you want to dribble towards that position. And when you do that, you're going to stretch the opposition defence, you're going to make their block less compact, you're going to find a way through. The problem in this game was that United couldn't really do that. And particularly down the left-hand side, everyone wants to come back in. So Bruno Fernandes wants to come back inside with the ball when he gets it. Cunha, we know, will always gravitate inside. Diogo Dalot was also taking his first touch inside. Now if we look over here, United is lacking raw, natural width and also natural pace, which is something that we have been concerned about. Players that can really stand up a fullback 1v1 and toast them and deliver. We sort of lacked that, and that was a bit of a problem. The other problem was down the right-hand side. This week, we didn't feel quite as dynamic. Now, I'm not going to be too critical here, because I think these 2 in recent weeks have been absolutely brilliant. I think Mbeumo and Ahmad have really started to click against Sunderland, Liverpool and Brighton. I think we've seen some really, really good stuff from them. In this match, not so much, and that's okay for them to have an off day, particularly whilst they are still sort of early on in their dynamic, their understanding. They don't know each other's game perfectly yet, so you're going to have off days. Unfortunately, it came at a time where United really needed them. United needed them to be hot because we were struggling as a team. And these 2 also sort of struggled. There were a couple of moments where Ahmad would pick the ball up on the right-hand side and he would sort of drift in left. And Mbeumo wasn't making the counter movement to spin into the right. You know, in recent weeks, when we've been confident, when we've been winning, when we've been playing well, you make those decisions a bit easier. You don't overthink things so much. Suddenly, we're in a losing position in this game, and we just seem to find ourselves in this situation. And now if you look at the team, we feel quite compact, we feel quite narrow, and I don't think that's necessarily our intention. We're almost accidentally ending up in this way, losing a lot of balance, and we know that if the game is central, if the game is narrow, if the game's compact, we're not actually great at moving the ball through the lines in the middle of the pitch. So it left United flat. Now, despite being flat and struggling to move the ball forward consistently, inevitably there were moments where United could, and we could get towards the final third. And I don't know about you guys, but it just didn't feel quite as sharp this week. Cunha, I think, was still good, one of our better players. He won us a lot of free kicks and gained us a lot of territory. But he wasn't quite as sharp as what he was against Liverpool, for example. And Mbeumo didn't have a bad game. He was a constant threat, and he always will be. But he wasn't quite as good as what he was against Brighton. And I think particularly in the case of Benjamin Sesko, it didn't work for him. He had a poor game. It's going to sound harsh, but most moves sort of fell apart around Sesko. Any nice play we did with a couple of quick interchanges in the middle here, particularly with Cunha, Sesko just wasn't making the ball stick. He wasn't quite bringing the ball into his stride, or he wasn't setting off the pass at the right time. Cunha in particular was getting incredibly frustrated by him. Now, again, I don't necessarily want to pile onto Sesko here and criticise him too much. He's a young centre forward, still adapting to a new league. We know he's still quite raw. He's several years away from his peak, so it's okay. When you've got a young player, you're going to get these matches. But the problem is for United, when you sort of add all these things together, it makes us quite easy to play against, right? Because the right side wasn't quite clicking for one reason or another. They didn't quite gel properly. The left side, the balance was wrong, almost in terms of team selection, squad building, things like that. Everyone wants to come back inside the pitch. So we're not really clicking down the right. We've got a lack of balance down the left. And we know that typically through the middle, we're not particularly good. And when we were, it sort of fell apart around our striker. And ultimately, that's why United struggled to attack in this football match. Now, you will say that United scored 2 goals, but it was a set piece and the second phase of a set piece. It wasn't a case of creative, free-flowing football. I wouldn't really say that United created too many great chances. There were moments where we looked like we were sort of about to, but again, that final technical detail was lacking. And that's why overall, again, I use that sweeping statement, we were quite easy to play against. Now, again, I think it's important that we don't overreact to this too much as well. Just like when we were winning, we weren't incredible. When we draw, we're not suddenly terrible. It's always somewhere in between, and it's a bit of a balancing act. Ultimately, United are still 4 games unbeaten, and if you offered me 3 wins and a draw from these 4 fixtures, I absolutely would have taken it. The frustrating thing is, it feels like a missed opportunity. It really feels as though if we could have won this match playing a different style of football, perhaps a more advanced style of football, that really would have been a great sign of where we are, because we would have shown in recent weeks that we can be pragmatic. Now in a game where we can express ourselves, we can do that and we can win. So to not do that and to play quite poorly really is a hit. Like I said, it felt almost like teleporting 12 months back to the first season where it was really poor, and that's not a great sign on the 12-month anniversary of Ruben Amorim being appointed as manager of United. It felt quite Amorim from last season, where passive, quite easy to play against, not really clicking in the final third, a lot of players almost taking things into their own hands and it not working. All in all, not a great day for United, but the positive is we didn't lose. That might sound silly to say against a poor team, but we saw last season, I think we would have collapsed when we concede 2 goals in quick succession. I think we would have gone under and lost the match. Getting a draw is something. We probably should have won it just at the end there, but we didn't. We're lucky to get a draw from this game. What United have to do is take the point. We didn't lose. We have to reset, and next week we have to improve. And importantly, next time we play this type of game, we have to be better. Next time we're expected to dominate the ball, we have to dominate the ball. We have to sustain attacks. We have to put the opposition under pressure, and we have to create more chances. We didn't do that this weekend. We've seen it before. We've got to learn from it and build on it in the future. Whether we will or not is something that we have to wait and see. For now, it's sort of a weekend of reflection where we didn't play particularly well, but hopefully we can sort of get that out of the way and get ourselves back on track next weekend. We're going to have to wait and see if we do that. For now, there's nothing left to talk about, so we're going to stop talking. Thank you guys very much for watching this video. I hope you have enjoyed it. If you have, please leave a like, subscribe, and get your notifications on. And as always, I'll see you in the next one.